All right, it's time to talk about the Continental Football League. I've been a little bit nervous about talking about this league because so many times we've had football leagues that have come into this space, like the ones I think about, it's like Major League Football, more recently, the IFA, and you see those leagues, they just haven't really done well. There's always been some kind of financial reason for it, and then players get stranded, and you hear all these weird stories. So it's really hard to figure out like which leagues are absolutely legit versus the ones that are just floating out there just to be out there. But the Continental Football League's kind of caught my attention a little bit. Just wanted to, from far away, wanted to see what this league is about. So, finally decided, let me do a video on it. There's been a lot of news that's come out of it the last couple of days, so I thought it'd be a good time to maybe get caught back up on what's going on with it and kind of share my thoughts on it. So, basically, this is a league that's going to start up next summer between the months of June and July. Not sure if that's going to be overlapping the UFL or if they're going to start right after it. I guess their reason for playing in the summer is to kind of fill in the gap between maybe where the UFL plays versus where the NFL plays in America, because there's space there to play football. Obviously, despite the fact that there's, there's some indoor football leagues that play it. There's the CFL that obviously plays during the summer, but they're trying to fill in the gap within America at least. So two teams so far are in this league. You got the Texas Syndicate that are going to be playing in Austin, and you got the Ohio Valley Ironmen who were playing in the IFA previously and had a lot of success through that. But obviously, we kind of all know the story by now about the IFA and how rough it's been for them over the last year. But with that, the last couple days, like I've said, they've brought some interesting news to the plate, and I thought it'd be a good time to kind of talk about some of the ideas they've been having and some of the I would say ambitious ideas that they've brought to the table that I think are going to be very interesting. So there was one in particular that I originally was going to make the video just solely about, but then right before the recording, they just dropped other news that I kind of wanted to talk about as well. So first, I wanted to talk about this new rule change called the Continental Shift. So basically, how they're describing it is at the start of the fourth quarter, they're going to announce and they're going to make the Continental Shift. So that means the rules completely change. So first, it's going to be 3 downs instead of 4 downs. So that's coming for the CFL, obviously. The play clock goes from 40 seconds to 20 seconds. They say that's forcing both sidelines to operate at a fever pitch. The third is Canadian motions in play, so the waggle and stuff like that will be in effect, so receivers can move around and stuff. Defenses are going to have to be lined up 1 yard off the ball to create cleaner blocking angles and bigger lanes. And then the last one is on special teams. The Rouge rule comes to effect. So if any balls go outside go past the exit the end zone basically out of bounds, then it's worth 1 point. And then no fair catches. They are not allowing the fair catch, which is very similar to what the XFL is, except that coverage teams have to respect the 5 yard halo rule for the returner to catch it before they can go in and make a tackle. So let me tell you something. I'm all about ambition and trying different things. I'm actually very fascinated to see how this works. This is thinking way outside the box. And at first, my thought was, well, that's kind of weird. I mean, now you're just kind of maybe doing a little too much and trying to be a little bit out there. But the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, it could work. It could be interesting. Like this will never happen in the NFL. I don't think the UFL is ever going to do it. But I'm really glad that this Continental Football League is going to do it because that's actually got my attention. Like this is the one thing where I'm like, okay, I kind of want to watch a whole game to see what it looks like, especially in the fourth quarter. You're definitely adding more intrigue. I honestly love the play clock idea to make it 20 seconds. I think it's insane. It's going to create a lot of like no huddle offenses. Probably gonna have to go to the wristband. Gonna have to do a lot of just quick, signals off the sidelines. Like that is just gonna be just utter chaos from a living hell that I just love. Like I'm all for it. Of all these rules that they added in, I'm most fascinated by the play clock and how that's gonna work. 3 downs, obviously, like as somebody who follows the CFL, I like the 3 downs. I think it does add more intrigue. I think it does force teams to pass the football more. So it does make it a more pass friendly situation, especially in the fourth quarter. You don't want teams to kind of kill off the clock. So the having the three downs plus the play clock thing, I think kind of eliminates that part where you kind of have to keep playing. Like you have to keep going. Even if you have like a three possession lead, that's not comfortable in the fourth quarter in the Continental Football League. So I love that idea. I think it's going to be, I'm fascinated to see how it works. I actually wouldn't mind if they did like the play clock and stuff like that. Like if they wanted to make it all four quarters and just make it total and utter chaos, you know, I think you can get in more plays, but they have the option too if they're really thinking about. I know that like the XFL kind of experimented with like clock situation, like trying to figure out ways of shortening the game from 3 hours to like 2.5 hours. If this thing ends up working with the play clock where teams can still operate with a 20-second play clock on offense and defense, there might be an option there where you can actually shorten the game, the game time going from like 15 minutes to like 10 minutes, do these 20-second play clocks and still have the same amount of plays and have, less game time on it where, you go from 60 minutes to 40 minutes and then like the full time total goes from 3 hours to like you might be able to drop it to two. So I'd be fascinated to see like if this ends up like working out where this might actually be the first step in like revolutionizing the way to shorten games and maybe attracting a fan base because like I look from my wife's perspective when she watches football, she's bored by it because it takes like 40 seconds each time for the players to like, run a play. There's always that big break in between with the play clock. And she's always been like, oh, that's kind of boring. Like she'd like something more like hockey and basketball where it's more like fast paced and moving around and soccer where there's always something happening. In football, there is a bit of a break in between. So I'd be fascinated to see how this works with the play clock. Does it end up adding more excitement to the game? But also there's another point to the injury portion of it. Is this going to create more injuries for players? Because now they don't have as much rest time. They may not have as much time to make substitutions. So now you players are going to have to play through a full drive, even though they may be tired or injured. Like that might be the part where there could be some like a devil's advocate part of it. Like, let's make sure we're still protecting the players and making sure they don't get hurt. So, again, this was a great experiment. I'm very fascinated to see how it works. I hope it actually works out because I do think this could bring a different element to football that hasn't been really discussed before. So we'll see how the continental shift works. Kudos to them for thinking outside the box. I mean, they're trying to find ways to really stand out compared to like the NFL, the CFL, and the UFL. And this is definitely one way of doing it where you're kind of combining a little bit of everything into one and then kind of just being a little out of the box, a little rambunctious about it. Kudos to them. I think this could either work really well or this could be absolutely disastrous. But you know what? At least they're the ones taking the chance with it and they're trying to do what they can to think outside the box. So honestly, tip to the cap to them. I think this is a really good idea. And one other thing I wanted to talk about with the Continental Football League, and this was actually like this just popped up right before I started my podcast. So basically, they had an article here talking about roster management and how it's going to work. So going into training camp, they're going to have 50 players that they can invite to try out for the football team. Um, Half of that roster, which is 25, half of that roster has to be between 18 to 25 years old. For them, this rule is in place because they one want to keep the league young. Two, they want to create a developmental bridge for players come out of college or returning from other leagues, and it gives older players an opportunity to play as well. But it does seem like they're leaning a little more towards the sentiment that Mike Rapoli has done with the UFL and talking about wanting younger players to come in and make the UFL more developmental, where they're there for a year or two and then they get out and go play the NFL. So looks like the Continental Football League taking the same approach. So at the end of training camp, they will finalize their rosters. It will be 36 players that are active and 4 players that are on, I guess they call them practice players, or would be, I guess, their version of practice squad. After that, another thing they added was the requirement for local players. So each team must have 5 local players that are on the final roster. So these could be guys that played in high school there, played college there, some kind of capacity. They played within the school, and it has to be within the commissioner approved radius of the team's home stadium. I didn't see anything on whether, what that mileage looks like or stuff like that, but it looks like they want to try to bring in some local talent. And I like that idea. I think the UFL obviously doing the same thing as well, and they kind of bring that up in the article that the UFL is trying to bring in local talent as well, so they can try to attract people to come to the games because they know someone that they watched at high school or college. So I like that idea as well. They're trying to tie in the community into their teams right away. So that's a really good idea. There's also regional rights. So they'll be able to, from what they say is every COFL team, franchise is granted exclusive regional rights to players from nearby FBS, FCS, and small college programs. That means if a player graduates or leaves one of those schools, the COFL team with those rights gets the first opportunity to sign them. So kind of in the same realm of, you look at this Austin team that's coming in, they want to sign Texas or sign any of the other schools that are within the Austin area, they'll be able to go after them. I'm sure there may not be as many teams that are in this league, so I'm sure like the state of Texas will be wide open for them to go after those players. So it's interesting that as I read down the article, they did call out Mike Rapoli and gave him a lot of credit for the approach that he's taken with bringing in regional players and stuff. The one thing that they did mention, which I thought was kind of a fascinating note, was that he said, while Mike Rapoli and the UFL are doing a really good job of trying to make it more local and stuff like that, the big difference between the Continental Football League versus the UFL is that the UFL is still staying in their hub in Arlington, where everyone's going to live and practice and stuff like that. And I know eventually Mike Rapoli says he wants to get out of that and make sure everyone goes into their local markets, but obviously they're doing it to cut the costs of, paying for like practice facilities all over the country and stuff like that. So, I can understand that part. But the Continental Football League, they said they're the opposite. They are building their teams homegrown from scratch. Everyone's going to be in their own local markets. They're going to be playing in those in those cities or in those towns that they play in. They're going to be practicing there. They're going to live there. So they're hoping with bringing in local talent and having them play that, they will be able to do a better job of, marketing and getting, local fans to come to their games. So, um, I, and I think they tried to say in the article, like they tried to kind of word it as like, we're not trying, they're not intentionally trying to take a shot at the UFL, but they're saying like, hey, we're just more local. We're going to be more local versus what the UFL is currently doing, but still give their credit to Mike Rapoli for kind of taking that step and doing that. So a little bit of a subtle shot, but like not really. So, I like that the Continental Football League is going to be playing in their local markets. That is something the UFL does have to do, and they will do eventually. Mike Rapoli has said that himself, so it's going to eventually happen. It just may take a year or two to get to that point. While the Continental Football League, since they're starting from scratch, they're going to go right into their home markets, be able to practice and live there, and be able to connect to those communities. So, um, I like the approach of the Continental Football League. It seems good on paper. This is a league that did play back in the 60s. So there is some familiarity with it, but I guess it still remains to be seen, will this league actually launch? When are they gonna, bring in like coaches and players and stuff like that? How is that all gonna look? How's that gonna work? They still have plenty of time, obviously, before the June kickoff, and I'm sure they may be doing training camp probably around May and stuff like that. So they still have time to try to figure everything out and get that all sorted. I'm sure they already have a plan of attack with it, but um, I'd be fascinated to see how they're going to do. I'm really pulling for it. I always pull for these leagues to work out, no matter how many teams are in it, no matter what kind of structure it is. These football leagues are really important to the ecosystem of football. It gives players an opportunity to play, gives coaches an opportunity to coach, and also gives like staff members an opportunity to get experience that they would never get with the NFL. So these leagues are obviously very important for creating jobs in the economy. And it keeps their dreams alive. It keeps these coaches and players' dreams alive on being able to live it out by playing football, by coaching football. So, anytime you've had like Major League Football where they shut down after a week, players got stranded in Mobile, Alabama, and it was so crushing to see that these players that worked their dreams to play professional football, all of a sudden it's lost. And you look at the IFA, the absolute insane stories that are coming out of that. I don't know if it's true or not, but there's been some insane stories, but it's all been the financial part and them getting stranded and players not getting paid and stuff. We saw that with the Alliance of American Football where, players weren't getting paid after the first week and they said it was a payroll situation. But we all know they were full of crap and they just didn't have the finances to pay them right away. Like all these leagues, there's been so many examples of leagues that have been disastrous. So I'm really praying that this one actually works out. They actually play, they do well, and they can move on to, from season one. But the first big step is getting onto the football field and actually playing and then going from there. So I'm rooting for this league. I'm going to monitor it as we go on. But first of all, I mean, the first initial impressions, I like it. I like the direction they're going. The roster management's good. The roles are really fascinating. I think this league has a little bit of potential. I'm going to choose to be optimistic. I can be really pessimistic with these leagues a lot of times, but this one I'm going to choose to be optimistic. I'm going to give them a chance. I hope it works out, and should be a lot of fun to see. So make sure to like, subscribe, comment on this video. Let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think of the Continental Football League? Do you think this is going to be the real deal? Do you think it will be a legitimate competitor to the UFL, or do you think it will be, at least legit enough that it will be able to, survive past the year? What do you think about these rule changes? Just everything about this league. What are your thoughts on it? Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.